I will now call the regular meeting of the Louisville Metro Air Pollution Control Board to order. Due to the COVID-19 outbreak, we are conducting the monthly board meeting today by video teleconference. First thing on the agenda this morning is call to order, recognition of a quorum. I will conduct a roll call of board members that are present on this teleconference. When I call your name, please say here. Steve Sullivan.
Here.
Dr. Colbert.
Here.
Dr. May. I think she's excused. Candace White.
Here.
Thank you. Marissa Neal. Dr. Daniel Gerst.
Here.
Thank you. Ms. Hampton, do we have any introductions this morning?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Hampton, do we have any public recognitions this morning?
No, sir.
Okay. We at the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held on June 15th were distributed electronically for your review. Are there any changes to the minutes by board members?
No.
Any upgrades? Hearing none? Okay. Hearing none, the minutes stand approved and are adopted. Thank you. Mr. Gurry, has anyone registered to make a statement this morning?
No, Chairman, no.
Okay. Mr. Gurry, has anyone provide written comments this morning?
No, Chairman, no.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in the Addison room that wish to make a comment? If so, please raise your hand. Seeing none, okay. Are there any other members of the public that wish to make a brief comment on this teleconference? Please raise your hand by teleconference and you will be called upon. This is a feature you can find on your participant list or by pressing *3. If joining by phone, you will be called upon.
I'm seeing no hands, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Gurry, has anyone wish to speak?
No, Chairman, no.
Thank you. That completes the public comment portion of the minutes. Now we have unfinished business. There is no unfinished business today. New business. Mrs. King has new business for the board to consider. Mrs. King.
As you all know, at the June board meeting, the board approved the disbursement from the Air Quality Trust Fund to purchase a suite of electric lawn care equipment, a storage shed, and safety supplies for use at the Hope Village, a pilot project where individuals experiencing homelessness can live temporarily outdoors with shelter and outreach services. The equipment, supplies, and storage shed have all been ordered, and most have been delivered to the Hope Bus, the operator of the Hope Village site. However, due to cost increases and additional shipping charges since the initial cost estimate was put together, the total purchase amount exceeded the approved trust fund disbursement amount by $509.98. Would the board approve an additional disbursement to cover the full purchase of the equipment requested? A motion and a second followed by a vote by the board is required to approve this request.
Also move.
Second.
Properly moved and have a motion and second. Is there any questions regarding a motion to disperse funding in an amount of $509.98 from the Air Quality Trust Fund to cover additional costs of the Hope Bus project?
Not for me.
No questions? Now I will take a roll call. Please say yes if you wish to approve the disbursement of $509.98 from the funds, and no if you do not. Steve Sullivan?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Dr. Colbert?
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. May? I think she's not present. Candace White?
Yes.
Thank you. Marissa Neal? Okay. Dr. Daniel Gorsh?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion has passed, and the board has approved the motion to disperse $509.98. Thank you, Mrs. King. Committee reports, no committees met in the last month. Mrs. Hamilton, we have the director's report.
Thank you very much, Chairman Hilton, and good morning, everyone. I'm going to jump right in today on an update on the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. First, the district is asking for public comment on a proposal to redesignate Louisville to attainment of the 2015 ozone National Ambient Air Quality Standards. The public comment period ends on July 29th, next Friday. The public hearing may be held on August 3rd if we receive a request by July 22nd. That's this Friday. More information about the proposal, which requests that the area be redesignated to attainment based on already achieved emissions reductions and associated improvements in air quality, may be found on the district's webpage under proposed action. In the event our area is not redesignated to attainment, it will instead be reclassified to a higher level of non-attainment, moderate non-attainment. We've talked about this a number of times already this summer. I'm hoping that shortly we will not have to talk about this. If we are bumped up, the DPH report, moderate non-attainment, it would bring additional requirements, including implementation of reasonably available control technologies and reasonably available control measures for rack trackers, and eventually a requirement for the area to re-implement a vehicle testing or inspection and maintenance program. Getting redesignated will stay on that work. I'm very interested in seeing us redesignated as quickly as possible. Although we've had a few exceedances of the ozone standard at 70 parts per billion this summer, we have not today violated the standard. You asked today if we would have an ozone air quality action alert day, and the answer for today is no. There's a tremendous amount of humidity, and that's helping us push down the formation of ozone. It's going to feel bad outside, but it's not an air quality action day. There may be some coming this weekend, and of course, you can find out more information about those air quality alerts on the district's webpage or through social media, CARE, Twitter, Facebook. So if you are not already following the district, I encourage you to do so. This summer's weather is a challenge. We appreciate the efforts that many people take, from not mowing, working from home, fueling when it's cool, taking the bus, or many of the actions that our air quality action partners are taking on those action days to reduce their emissions. Our forecasts are intended to be protective of public health. We want people to be able to understand if they're in that sensitive group, what the day may look like for them, but we also want to encourage people to take steps to reduce those precursors of ozone, nitrogen oxide, and volatile organic compounds, and perhaps we will not violate the standards. That's my ozone update. On to particulate matter. The Clean Air Act is a continuous improvement program, and it requires EPA to reevaluate the health impacts of each criteria group on a periodic basis, generally every 5 years or so. We're currently under the 2012 National Ambient Air Quality Standards for particulate matter. For the annual average, that's 12 micrograms. For the 24-hour average, it's 35 micrograms per cubic meter. We are expecting EPA to propose a new national ambient air quality standard for particulate matter in the next few weeks. Scuttlebutt around our world is that the current annual standard of 12 micrograms may be recommended to be revised as low as 8 to 10 micrograms per cubic meter. The news is a little more uncertain on that 24-hour average. We've heard that it may be retained. We've heard that it may be somewhat lowered. As soon as we understand what that proposal is, we'll share that with the public and with the board so that we all can review it and understand what that means for our area. Specifically, our current design value, that's the 3-year data set that will be used to determine whether our area is attaining or not attaining that revised standard, is from our Durant Lane Air Monitoring Station. You'll our near road stations, where the annual standard is currently 10.3 micrograms per cubic meter, and the 24-hour average is 24.7 micrograms. So, as soon as we see that, we will let folks know.
Sorry, I'm getting that you're a little hard to hear. The speaker is right next to you. If you want to move it a little closer to you.
Will do. This past Monday, I took part in a bus tour with Metro leaders looking at the environmental impacts of highway interchanges on neighborhoods, including increased noise, light, and air pollution, as well as other concerns, and talking about ways to possibly mitigate those impacts. Everyone can track global air quality compliance, those national ambient air quality standards, monthly through the board's air quality report. In addition to regular updates on those criteria pollutants of concern we've already talked about this morning, there are also two special reports in this month's report that may be of interest to the board and the public. And the first is our annual update on particulate matter that we measured during the 4th of July weekend. We expect to see, elevated levels of particulate matter during those 24-hour average periods around that time, and in fact we do. This year, the high was 24.9 micrograms per cubic meter, and that was monitored at the district's Watson Lane monitor. But as you'll see when you review the report, that elevated level drops off very quickly after midnight. We all return to the more normal 24-hour standard thereafter. The second is a special report on a Saharan dust event that the area experienced between June 14th and June 17th. For this event, the highest 24-hour average was 25.9 micrograms per cubic meter, and that was reported at the district's Carithers air monitoring station. That report will show you that all of our air monitors indicated an elevated presence of particulate matter during that time period. So my thanks to Brian Harris, ABCD's data analyst and QA toxic supervisor, and his team for putting those special reports together. Are there any questions?
I just have one question. You mentioned that you had a tour. Was that near the Waterson 264 West, near River Park Road, in that area?
That was one of the 7 stops that we made.
Okay.
We started over on Melwood and looked at interchanges in the Clifton neighborhood,
Right.
going up 65 and kind of winding our way over to Beachmont neighborhood.
Right.
And then that River Park and 264
Right.
interchange right there. And one of the things, ABCD works a lot in the very technical world, talk about how many micrograms per cubic meter things are, and that near road environment has more pollution than a non-near road environment.
Right.
But one of the things that the folks who asked us to join us on this tour, it was Councilwoman Nicole George and Councilman David James, was how those environments made us feel. And that's an interesting question to be asked. Some of the interchanges suffer from a lack of maintenance. They're
Right.
inaccessible
True.
to pedestrians. They're poorly lit.
Yeah, true.
It was very interesting, and I really appreciate the fact that they asked ABCD to join them. It helps us understand some of the kind of cumulative impacts that many in our community face.
Right.
Were the District 5 folks with you with KYTC, by chance?
So, Secretary Jim Gray was supposed to be on the tour. He was not able to join us. There were 2 representatives from Louisville who did join us on the tour. So, it's a challenge. I think everyone, one of the things that comes out of this, of course, is that everyone is struggling to make the best use of
Right.
limited resources. And I think the conversation was around, all right, we all acknowledge that. How do we leverage that into us working better together?
Can I ask one more question? The Watson Lane result, just visually, is quite a steep point. Is that just neighborhood firework activity? Okay.
I think traditionally we tend to see that in that instance.
Okay.
I appreciate their patriotic spirit.
They're good at it. They're very good. They get the big highway.
They like, well, the good news is we didn't violate any standards. That was right back in. So, all right, any other questions? Okay. Moving on. We've talked a number of times about reformulated gas this summer. When we last met, Governor Beshear had requested that USDA temporarily waive the requirement to use RFGs due to some delivery difficulties with barges delayed by work on the Greenup block on the Ohio River. So when we last met, EPA had indicated that they were evaluating the situation, but they had not yet determined whether to grant that waiver. Since then, EPA has verbally denied the request for a waiver, but they indicated that they would continue to evaluate the situation until the Greenup block work is done, and that work is anticipated to be completed on Friday the 29th. So, on July 5th, the district was invited to speak with members of the Interim Joint Transportation Committee of the Kentucky General Assembly about the continued use of reformulated gas in Louisville. I was joined by Michael Kennedy, the director of the Kentucky Division for Air Quality, and we presented background information on how RFG use in Kentucky began, its current use in Louisville and parts of Oldham and Bullitt County, ongoing requirements under the Clean Air Act, and our current attainment status. It was a very robust conversation, and I appreciate the opportunity to share information about Louisville air quality, RFG, and the district and its operations with members of the committee. Are there any questions about that?
Well, I guess, as I put the, everything to rest around the reformulated gas, since EPA has denied that request, the price of gasoline is dropping anyway, so.
And that's, you raised a good point. You know, I've been tracking the price of gasoline all summer, and currently this trend has continued. We use RFG here in Louisville. It's less expensive than the conventional gas used in Covington, and it's substantially less expensive than the gas that's used in Ashland. So I'm not really sure how to explain the fact that we continue to hear that the difference in price in Louisville is solely due to RFG, when clearly there are market factors at play. So in terms of retaining it as a control measure, it's part of our federal commitment. It is what helps us demonstrate that we are reaching attainment. And until we have an attainment redesignation, it's really very difficult to remove that control measure without finding quantifiable, enforceable, real, surplus, and permanent permanent emissions to replace the emission reductions we get from RFG. And today, we've not identified that set of replacement emissions. We're currently meeting the standard with what we have reduced. We need to move forward with our redesignation request.
I just have one comment. If Governor Beshear is so serious about the price of gasoline, why doesn't he suspend the gasoline tax? He can do that, I think.
So there was a 2-cent increase in gasoline taxes that was supposed to go into effect on July 1, and that's been stayed.
Okay.
So you're right, that is something that someone else controls.
Right.
But with respect to RFG, that's our current status.
Okay.
Do you know, was the meeting that we'll have, was that tape?
It was, we'll be happy to share a copy. I will let folks know that, you know, during our exchange, Representative Bratcher did ask how he could eliminate my job in the district. So, you know, we're a creature of statute. We're under care of Chapter 77. So there's nothing that's been filed. Should anything be filed, we'll be sure to alert the board as soon as we see that. We do work with a wonderful contact in the mayor's office, who is our liaison with the General Assembly, and she'll be on the watch to be sure that we see that if and when it's filed.
Was there anyone in the meeting that was able to discuss the economics of gas pricing?
No, not directly, but there is a fantastic 2016 Kentucky Legislative Research Commission investigative report on the price of gasoline at RFG. And when we send you the link to the waiting
Okay.
for that report. It evaluated, trying to tease apart the production cost of RFG, which we understand from USDA is between 5 and 7 cents per gallon, the associated transportation costs, and then what happens when it hits that retail market. And it came to the conclusion that it was themselves. So they acknowledged that there is more there than just the pure cost of RFG.
You know, I've heard some reporting related to, temporary giving up the gas tax. And they suggest that, some folks anyway, that price benefit would never reach the consumer, which is a strange concept at some level, but nonetheless, complicated economics.
It's very complicated economics. So I very much agree with that. Okay, any other questions? Moving on. Okay. Notes on RFG. Okay, so on to some more good news. On July 7th, the district awarded its second Lawn Care for Cleaner Air grant award to the West End School. I will say this, it was one of the hottest days I think I've been outside in a long time. It was very hot, and it was very wonderful. The package that we awarded includes professional powered electric lawn equipment to help that nonprofit maintain their grounds, advance their own sustainability goals, expand and encourage the use of cleaner, more sustainable in Louisville, particularly by showing that this equipment, especially the professional equipment, is capable of maintaining large campuses. Louisville has 71,000 mowable acres of land and about 20.5 million pounds of air pollution is produced each year, operating gas-powered equipment to maintain that land. The Lawn Care for Cleaner Air program has helped reduce over 4 million pounds of air pollution. That's right at the neighborhood level. That's really impressive. I truly want to thank Michelle King, our Director of Program Planning, and Bradley Coons, our Environmental Coordinator, for establishing the grant program as another way to promote the use of cleaner lawn equipment. And again, especially around those large campuses. I also want to thank Monica Little, without whom we would all be lost on this program, because she continues year after year to manage the rebate program with excellence. The Lawn Care for Cleaner Air quarterly report has been posted and shared with you today. I really encourage you to take a look at that. I'm borrowing this from Bradley. As of July 6th of this year, the district has issued 382 rebates for the year. And that number is a 14% increase over the rebate total at the same time last year. And it's an 84% increase over the total in 2020. So this is really great news, and it really helps to keep global air cleaner. So congratulations to the Lawn Care for Cleaner Air team. Thank you again for an innovative way to try to get this equipment in use. Are there any questions about that? As always, the district regularly attends the meetings of the Rubbertown Community Advisory Council, or RCAC, and the West Jefferson County Community Task Force. At this month's meeting, MSC provided an update on its operations, including odor control. They also reported that they began work during the week of July 11th to repair the catch basins in the Park Duval neighborhood, as required by their agreed order with the board. They are now evaluating the catch basins in the combined sewers in the Chickasaw neighborhood. Plan to begin work to repair those in the future. The district has proposed a federally enforceable district origin operating permit, or C2, for MSD's Morris Foreman Water Quality Treatment Center operation. The facility has a big footprint in the West End. The public comment period will expire on August 8th, so we invite the public to share their comments and or request a public hearing. On July 12th, Ms. King took part in a panel discussion on Louisville's environmental justice needs and initiatives as part of the Courier Journal Courier Conversations with community members, advocates, and regulators. And then finally, kind of the big topic for today, and it is a big one, is that on June 30th, the Supreme Court issued their decision in West Virginia DCCA. There they reversed and remanded an earlier decision of the D.C. Circuit Court on the basis that EPA lacks authority to regulate greenhouse gases from existing power plants under Section 111D of the Clean Air Act. I'd like to share more about the Supreme Court's decision, but I first want to assure everybody that this decision does not in any way impact the district's operations. It doesn't impact our regulations program, including the Strategic Toxic Air Reduction, or STAR program. With that out of the way, I'd like to try to walk folks through how we got to the Supreme Court briefly, what happened there, and then what we think may happen next. So if I lose you along the way, board members, please stop me and I'll try to fill in the blanks. So this is a little bit about background, and I'd like to thank our partners at the National Association for Clean Air Agencies. They do a tremendous job of helping us distill this information and trying to help us communicate it in a clear way. In mid-2000, Congress tried, but failed to pass national greenhouse gas legislation. Some of that was looking at cap-and-trade type programs, market-driven programs. In 2007, though, the Supreme Court decided in Massachusetts, the EPA, that EPA had the authority and an obligation to regulate greenhouse gases under the Clean Air Act. Put a marker in that decision. In 2009, EPA issued an endangerment finding. That's a necessary first step to regulating greenhouse gases to a threat to public health and the environment. In 2015, EPA proposed the Clean Power Plan under Section 111D of the Clean Air Act to reduce emissions from existing electric generation units by shifting generation from coal to cleaner energy sources, with major targets for that shift to be done by 2030 and thereafter. The Clean Power Plan was stayed by the Supreme Court in 2016 and never finalized. In 2019, the EPA proposed the Affordable Clean Energy Rule to replace the Clean Power Plan. This rule was invalidated by the D.C. Circuit in 2021 and also never finalized. West Virginia and others subsequently sued to overturn the D.C. Circuit Court's decision, and it's that case that the Supreme Court recently decided. So here's what the court decided. This is a quote. The only question before the court is whether the best system of emission reduction identified by EPA in the Clean Power Plan was within the authority granted to the agency in Section 111D of the Clean Air Act. For the reasons they evaluated, their answer was no. That's it. That's what this decision is about. Fairly narrow. It looks at, can EPA regulate from existing electric generating utilities using Section 111D of the Clean Air Act. So where does that leave us? Even though the Clean Power Plan never went into effect, even though the Affordable Clean Energy Rule never went into effect, the shift from coal-fired electric generation to natural gas required in the plan by 2030 has already occurred. It happened by mid-2021, about 9 years early. This is primarily due to a shift from coal to natural gas to meet other regulatory requirements, including the Mercury Air Toxics Rule, certain regulations under the Clean Water Act, and market demand, including increased supply and lower costs for natural gas-fired generation, and marketplace disincentives to continued corporate investment in coal-fired generation. Again, the Supreme Court's ruling only considered whether that best system of emission reduction identified by EPA was appropriate under Section 111D for those existing electric generating units. EPA can still regulate greenhouse gases. They are not overturning Massachusetts EPA, in which they decided EPA had the authority and the obligation to regulated greenhouse gases. So this decision does nothing to overturn Massachusetts EPA. That requirement and obligations on EPA continue. By economic sector, transportation accounts for 27% of the U.S. greenhouse gas emissions. EPA regulates those tailpipe emissions. We see that as a CAFE standard. We see that as that heavy-duty truck rule that's being proposed and currently considered. 24% comes from industry. And as we know here locally, Congress and EPA recently took action to substantially reduce emissions from this sector by passing the American Innovation and Manufacturing Act and the HFC, or hydrocarbon reduction rule, to reduce emissions of those hydrocarbons, which are potent greenhouse gases. EPA regulates those sources. Same thing for new sources of electric generation. Electricity generation accounts for another 25%. And just like the industrial sources, where EPA can and does regulate, there are additional regulations under the new source performance standards and also under the Prevention of Significant Deterioration program that apply to sources and their greenhouse gases. EPA can continue to regulate them. Where this decision says is EPA, they can't use 111B. So, EPA has been steadily working on some other regulatory proposals, which we expect to see in spring 2023, that rely on more explicit statutory authority and will likely require additional reductions in greenhouse gases from those existing coal-fired power plants. It'll likely continue to incentivize further generation shifts from fossil fuels to renewables. So we've gone from coal to natural gas. That's a big increase in emission reductions, also a different type of combustion. So we've seen market improvements in those criteria for the secondary benefit. So what that will look like, we're not exactly sure. They could rely on another part of the Clean Air Act, just not 111B, or it is possible that they could come out with a national ambient air quality standard and treat it like a criteria pollutant. There's been some talk about that. I don't know how realistic any of that is, but I do know that the administration has been working on these proposals, and again, we'll likely see those later in the spring. One of the bigger takeaways from this decision, though, and this is really important for all administrative agencies, not just EPA, is that many decisions where a reviewing court is looking at an action by an administrative agency, where they take to gap fill either an unclear provision of the statute or kind of a vague area of the statute, used to be evaluated under something called Chevron deference. For those of us who work in administrative practice, it's the Chevron two-step. Basically, the court comes out and says, is this within the agency's expertise? And then if the answer is yes, this is a reasonable way to go about this. That's basically the deference that they have expressed to administrative agencies for decades. Here, the court declined to use that Chevron deference and instead relied on something called the major questions doctrine. That major question, there's a fair amount of court kind of trying to put some corners around what that major questions doctrine is. Fairly new. We've seen it in a few cases coming up to the Supreme Court. Now they're trying to really kind of lay out what does that really look like. But here, for understanding more, I think about EPA's situation, the court kind of explained the major questions doctrine as EPA exceeded the authority that Congress granted to it by attempting to regulate a significant portion of the U.S. economy. That really the court was grappling with, is EPA working within a gray area, or are they starting a completely new path? Their answer with this major questions doctrine was, we've gone a step too far. This is an area where we think Congress needs to step in or you need to use a provision where there is a clear link of congressional intent. So that major questions doctrine, again, it doesn't just apply to US EPA, but we'll likely see it apply in decisions for places like HUD, the SEC. So look forward to decisions coming out, and we're really trying to articulate with this board what that looks like. So that brings us up to where we're at. And that leaves us with EPA is going to propose a new regulation to address greenhouse gases for existing electric generating units by the spring. EPA's authority to regulate greenhouse gases will continue to be challenged. We will see additional challenges, whether that's to a rule and how EPA uses the new provision under the Clean Air Act to try to implement it. We may see it on something other than the EGU. We might see it for vehicles, uncharted here. In Congress, just as it did recently with the American Innovation and Manufacturing Act that requires reductions of hydrocarbons, if they're equivalent to greenhouse gas, too, may continue to act. So the best I can say is this point is stay tuned. There's a lot of work going on in this arena, and we will let the board know as we hear and learn and understand things about it. So, are there any questions about that?
No. No.
All right. Okay, so this is my last thing. And boy, I put this up to the end because I'm tired of having to say it first. I know everyone is wondering where my COVID update is.
I have a question. Do you think electrical utilities would prefer to have their coal-fired generators regulated rather than this generational shifting approach? I think probably not.
So I'll talk like an old regulator because I have a similar desire. Just like those electric generating utilities, I like certainty. So this is a very uncertain regulatory area for the utilities to plan for. LG&E just filed this integrated resource plan with the Public Service Commission. They're trying to forecast out 15 years. What will we need to do? What are the impacts of our electric generating needs? What renewables look like? What gas looks like? So for them, this uncertainty makes it that much more difficult for them to plan, to be able to use their resources as the PSD requires, and that is to provide electricity at the lowest rate. As a regulator, I want to be sure that I have the right people in the right place to be able to implement this program. And so these plans come out, we review them, we evaluate what would that mean for us, for our staff, for permitting, compliance, enforcement. What does that mean for our planning for our national ambient air quality standards? And then it gets validated or stayed. Something new comes along, we do it all over again. So, again, that uncertainty, Dr. Coburn, that's probably the most frustrating part of this for everyone. So some clarity and consistency would be helpful. Charlie, it looks like you're in a question.
No, I just think there's more uncertainty now than there was.
Yes, but again, those marketplace forces, the availability of natural gas as a fuel, how Louisville Metro itself is pushing for cleaner energy. That's a very powerful incentive. Louisville Metro government has its own commitment to be carbon neutral. They also have programs to incentivize people in Louisville to conserve energy, to also provide solar. So I think the marketplace is going to help force some of the direction that utilities will have to take.
That's true.
All right. If nothing more, I'll continue on. So, all right, we've been at this since March of 2020. It feels like a really long time. It has been a really long time. I've been giving you a monthly COVID update. We're in the yellow. Lots of counties and areas around us have moved into the red. Please be sure that you continue to review the agenda each month to see whether you can participate in our meetings, whether we're meeting in person or online, and we will continue to provide as much opportunity for people to join us in an accessible forum as we can. If you have any questions that are related to COVID, please call Public Health and Wellness 502-912-8598. They can help you find places to test, vaccination, and even resources in your quarantine. It's very nice to see everyone here today. We've been working in this virtual world now for 2 years, and often all you see is this tiny little square of someone who pops in and out of your view as we have these meetings. And in conversation with some board members, they expressed how difficult it was to get to know people because all they saw was this bouncing little box. So today I'm going to take just a few minutes and introduce you all to some district staff members. And I'm going to go ahead and, Byron, if you'll bring that up. Dr. Gardner, am I going to block you if I stand here? Okay. All right. So, next slide, please. This is our basic organizational chart, and you can find this on our website. What I want to point out to the board first is that little box up there in the broken line area. And I know it's hard for you to see. That is the Air Pollution Control Board. You are our regulatory authority, and that includes passing our regulations and providing enforcement approval for matters over $5,000. With that, next slide. There's some special people who provide support directly to the board, and that's required by HERA Chapter 77. The board members are listed here. That's also on our website, which is linked at the bottom. But the board is actually served by 2 statutory positions, an air pollution control officer and a secretary-treasurer. Matt King and Steve Grabett serve as our air pollution control officers. Byron Gary is our secretary-treasurer. You'll see why we have 2 when we look at our kind of larger org chart. Next slide, please. We are also very capably assisted, both as a district and as the board, by the Jefferson County Attorney's Office. Stacey Dodd is our board parliamentarian, but Juan Wen is also a Jefferson County attorney who is becoming our expert in Clean Air Act with Stacey. And we have a very long-serving paralegal, Tammy Garland, for whom we rely on to keep those documents that the county attorney uses and their work here in the district well under control. Next slide. This is a very simple way that I like to use to show how the district works. And you'll see that this kind of flow chart is reflected in our org chart. We monitor the air, develop programs, policies, regulations, depending on where that air quality is, same with those national ambient air quality standards, or even our own concerns with air toxics. We write permits, follow up with compliance, take enforcement, and through it all, we continue to monitor the air. Next slide. This org chart is a little hard to read, but it gives you everyone who works at the district. And what you'll see again is that we are broken out by air monitoring, firm compliance and enforcement, program planning. And I would be remiss if I also didn't say that none of that gets done unless we have the excellent type of administrative support that we're lucky to have here at the district. So, go through these kind of one at a time. This is our air monitoring staff. I've got their manager and supervisor here. You'll often see or hear from them during the board meeting. But for all of these groups, the people who work at the district are a very unique group of dedicated environmental professionals. I often speak to my counterparts across Metro, and I really know how lucky I am. This is an amazing group of dedicated professionals. So you see Billy DeWitt. He also wears another hat. He is our quality assurance officer. And while that's not required to support the board by KRS 77, it is required by US EPA so that we can demonstrate that our air monitoring data is valid. Brian Harris joins us from Arizona. He helps with our air quality forecasting, as well as being the supervisor of the quality assurance section. Tom Law, who sent me 3 photos, including an action shot at me, manages our quality control section. These are the folks who are actually day-to-day out working with the instrumentation, being sure that it's collecting at that time good data, and it's in good shape. Next slide, please. This is our industrial permitting section. Of course, we have Matt King, who has that dual role of the air pollution control officer. And in the past, we had just one air pollution control officer. Their role is to provide technical support to the board. Matt's a professional engineer, and he has working with him Eva Addison, who is one of the district's most long-serving members, and Karen Thorne, another professional engineer in the section. One other just quick note here. Matt also has, in addition to these industrial permit folks, an emissions inventory environmental coordinator who does our mobile source modeling. Next one. So this is the compliance and enforcement team. You see Steve Grivette, that second air pollution control officer. When we reorganized, we realized that we really needed to better manage that kind of standing control of oversight to operations. And having those 2 air pollution control officers on kind of either end of the paperwork process, writing the permit and then being sure that the permit is being followed, has really helped us add more strength to those assessments. Steve Grivette is joined by DJ Fountain, who also is our RMP, or Risk Management Program Coordinator, and Kyle Zimmerman, who prepares the Community Compliance Status Report for you. DJ's team are the industrial engineers who go out and inspect and investigate those industrial sources. Kyle's team of compliance officers investigate those community concerns of dust, odor, and open burning. Next one. So we're coming down to program planning. This is the point that's a little out of order here, where when we have work to be done, program planning is the section where it all starts. Laying out our regulatory provisions, being sure that we're preparing that state implementation plan to demonstrate that we are meeting that national ambient air quality standard. A lot of communications are in this section, as you'll see as well, both our communications specialist, Matt Mudd, and also our CARE program. So there's a lot of outreach through CARE, Lawn Care for Cleaner Air, Grow More, Mow Less. This is a really important part of the district's day-to-day operations. Next slide, please. On this one as well, this is our administrative group, and Michelle's wearing 2 hats. In addition to being that director of program planning, she's also our executive administrator at times. Currently, she's assisted by Rachel Smith, who helps manage our administrative staff. And again, those folks make sure that we have IT that works. They make sure that our lights are on because they help us pay the bills. They order our supplies, they manage our fleet of vehicles, they manage the building, and they help us hire new people and bring them into this work. So these are the folks that you're most likely to see during a board meeting, but they won't always be the only ones. It is my hope that as we continue to move through COVID, we continue to have more projects, that some of our frontline staff will be coming before the board so you can really get to know the depth of our bench. Are there any questions?
Are you at full capacity now?
We have a few vacancies. Some of that is strategic. We're kind of looking to see how we fill those. We should be filling those shortly, but we're at a very workable level at the moment. Matt, Steve, Michelle, would you all like to add anything?
Nothing to add, but just grateful to have great teams to work with. We have some excellent staff members across that entire work chart, and the amount of expertise they bring is really unparalleled. We're very lucky here in Louisville.
And Billy DeWitt is currently in Greensboro, North Carolina, with EPA's Office of Research and Development, being trained on using a commercial SPOD, which is the type of next generation emissions monitoring equipment that they brought here in Louisville to test out. It's now gone commercial, so we hope to see some of that equipment in use here in Louisville in the future.
Well, thank you. That was very helpful for me and for the other board members and anybody else who has to come in contact.
Yeah,
I hope it will be. Yes. These are some of the finest air quality professionals you will meet across the country, and I am confident in saying that, and I know that because I hear it from EPA. So thank you for that opportunity to brag a little bit. Sorry that we don't have everyone's picture to show you. We may put together a directory, and if so, we'll share that with the board. But thank you very much.
thank you. We appreciate, it's always good to have, a name with a face, so, and we do have quite a few, new folks. But I know most of them. I've been around probably longer than most of them, 7 years, so I know most of them. But thank you so much for that presentation, Sampson. Or any other questions, Mrs. Hampton? If not, let's get back to the our reports, our quality data. There's any are any questions, upgrades to our quality data? What about our toxic report? I have any notes on that. That looks good. Enforcement status report. No. The complaint. No, excess emission report. And I think on the complaint investigation, we still have people still burning trash, leaves and everything. I just probably are probably not aware of the ordinance around open burning, are they?
That's one of the first steps that our compliance officers do. And I will say that many of us have difficult conversations about how we're going to address that big air quality.
Right.
These folks in our community compliance group, they have, I think, the hardest job in the agency, in that they're just going out and dealing with a situation where they have to confront someone,
It's not easy.
educate them, respond to someone who complains, who may be mad at that person.
Right.
It's not an easy job.
No.
They do a great job, and the first thing they do when they encounter an open burn situation is they leave materials that explain our open burning rules, and they request a call so that they can be sure that that message has been received.
Okay.
If there's recurrence of open burning at a place, what then happens?
It'll be on next month's board report, but we issued violations for open burns that continued. We issued one today. So
And are they associated with?
$150
Okay. Okay.
But we work with people as much as we can. That's only for repeat offenders. That are not.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Seems like the report's much longer this time than in the past. Is that
Yeah.
true?
Yes. It looked like it, yeah, when I was reading through it, yeah. But, I guess it just get to the point to educate the folks in the community. But, it's kind of, you know, it doesn't seem to go down, it goes up and down, but, I guess people just like to burn, have an open burning, I guess.
Carl, I like to think that that's because we do such a good job messaging that we're here.
Well,
At
least you,
respond, as opposed to people just sitting in next to them.
well, at least, it's where's the awareness around the neighbors and what's going on. You get a lot of calls from people that, calling in what's going on, so that's great, so, just keep up the good work. I know it's not easy. Yes.
I've got a question about that. We've had a lot of issues like that in our neighborhood, and I wondered, do we coordinate at all with the fire departments so that it can help better educate the residents in each area?
So the fire departments will respond if you call like 911 or, the police department. That'll normally get referred to the fire department, and if they respond, they will most of the time call us to let us know that they were.
Okay.
Because I had an issue I actually had to deal with. The fire department was out, and they just kind of waved it off as not a big deal. And I'm like, are you aware that it's not legal? So I was just wondering, are we communicating with the fire departments to make sure that they're educated as well, so they're communicating correctly to our residents?
Thank you for bringing that up. I'll make sure our community compliance group reaches out to the local fire department.
Okay.
Any other questions? Hmm? And the last one is lawn care for clean and iron quarterly report. That looks good. Any questions on that? Okay, it seems like we have completed our agenda. Before I adjourn, I'd like to thank all the board members that are present and the ones that are online for your continued participation in these meetings, and hopefully you will continue to support us. With that said, I will move that this regular meeting of the board, and thank you for your participation. The next board meeting is Wednesday, August the 17th at 10 a.m. Thank you again.
Thank you.